Good morning. Thank you for joining us today for the informational session on House Bill 1543 and the rulemaking process. I'm Annalyn Bergen, the Clean Buildings Performance Standard Compliance Lead and part of the rulemaking staff. Other presenters include Luke Howard and Dylan Ackerman. This slide represents our agency's purpose. If you're unfamiliar with Commerce, we offer a broad range of programs and services. Commerce touches every aspect of community and economic development. Commerce has over 400 grants and programs. We work with local governments, tribes, businesses, and civic leaders throughout the state to strengthen communities so all our residents may thrive and prosper. Here's today's agenda. I'll give an introduction of our Clean Buildings team and some background information on how the Clean Buildings Law came to be. This is an informational session. Our intention is to teach you about the rulemaking process, break down House Bill 1543, and the scope of our rulemaking. We will not be presenting proposed rules today. However, we will be presenting the results of the survey that was shared a couple of weeks ago. We hope that after today, you'll feel informed and you will join us for future rulemaking events. I want to provide a brief introduction to our building performance team. We've grown significantly over the years. Our entire team is dedicated to providing timely and actionable and clear information about the Clean Buildings Performance Standard. Let's take a step back and briefly review the role of buildings in the state's greenhouse gas emissions. Buildings have a profound impact on the environment. The building sector is the second largest carbon polluter behind transportation. While greenhouse gas emissions from buildings have decreased since their peak in 2000, they still make up about 26% of the state's emission in 2021. Existing buildings create unique challenges and opportunities as the state works to meet its greenhouse gas emission limits by 2030, 2040, and 2050. Investing in building energy efficiency is the most cost-efficient way to significantly reduce greenhouse gas emission. The Washington State Legislature recognized that it's in the state's interest to maximize full potential of energy efficiency standards, incentives, programs, and codes to keep both energy costs low and to meet our greenhouse gas emission reduction goals. So as a result, the Clean Buildings Law was authorized in House Bill 1257 during the 2019 legislative session. It was the first in nation statewide building performance standards, since 2019, more statewide building performance standards have been implemented. Washington's building performance standard is based on ASHRAE Standard 100, 2018, which covers energy efficiency in existing buildings. This is the reference standard. Through rulemaking, Commerce developed amendments to the standard to conform to the Clean Buildings legislation. The original legislation applied to Tier 1 buildings, which includes commercial buildings over 50,000 square feet. In 2022, the legislature expanded the law to include Tier 2 buildings, which includes commercial buildings between 20 and 50,000 square feet, and all multifamily residential over 20,000. This law charged Commerce with rulemaking, notifying building owners, administering incentives, and supporting mandatory compliance. I won't spend too much on this slide. If you were introduced to the Clean Buildings Performance Standard back in 2019 or even in 2020, a lot has changed. This slide outlines the legislative and rulemaking activities over the past 5 years, beginning in 2019 when the legislature passed House Bill 1257 up until today. Now I'd like to go over the rulemaking process. The Clean Buildings Law are now referenced as RCW 1927A-210, and it goes into RCW 1927A-260. The Clean Buildings Performance Standard includes that ASHRAE Standard 100 with amendments, which can be found in WAC 19450. Terms like RCW and WAC or WAC are acronyms that sound technical, but they're important to understand how government works, how laws are enforced, how public input shapes the rules that affect how building owners comply with the Clean Buildings Performance Standard. Think of the RCW as the what. It explains the law, what the law says must and must not happen, House Bill 1543 became law. When House Bill 1543 became law, it became an RCW. The WAC is the how to follow the law and explain how the government enforces it. The RCW stands for Revised Code of Washington. This is the official collection of all the laws passed in Washington by the Washington State Legislature and signed by the governor. These are the laws that apply to everyone in the state, whether it's paying taxes, driving, running a business, or complying with the Clean Buildings Performance Standard. RCWs are statutes. They're written and passed by elected lawmakers, your state senator and representative, which are your state senator and your representative. Once a bill is approved by the legislature, it's later signed by the governor and becomes an RCW. WAC stands for Washington Administrative Code. These are detailed rules and procedures created by state agencies, such as the Department of Commerce, to enforce and carry out the laws in the RCW. RCWs usually outline the broad legal requirements, while WAC gets into the specifics. So WACs are created and amended through rulemaking. The rulemaking process ensures that rules are created openly and with public input. Anyone can participate in the rulemaking process. In fact, public participation is a key part of the rulemaking process. You can submit written comments, speak at public hearings, attend our workshops and webinars, or just simply ask questions and ask for more information. So the rulemaking process is written out in RCW 34.05, the Administrative Procedures Act. The rulemaking process begins with filing the CR 101 to indicate that we'd like to get the process of amending our rules started. After a series of workshops, the Clean Buildings team enters the next phase, finalizing the draft rules. The team files the draft rules with a CR 102 form. This form includes the Small Business Economic Impact Statement. The CR 102 starts the formal public comment period, which usually lasts about 30 days and concludes with public hearing. So Commerce holds a public hearing after the CR 102 is filed. We hear concerns, suggestions, and learn about unintended consequences. After reviewing the comments and making any needed changes, Commerce adopts the final version of the rule. This is filed as a CR 103. The rules are adopted in 30 days after the filing. Once adopted, the rule becomes part of the WAC. So this slide displays the rulemaking timeline for House Bill 1543. These dates are subject to change. Our first rulemaking workshop is scheduled for July 2nd. We hope to conclude the entire process by December of this year. This slide depicts the cycle of public comments during the workshop phase. After every workshop, draft rules will be emailed to registrants and later posted to the website as soon as possible. We'll give you 2 weeks to comment on those draft texts, and we'll summarize feedback at the subsequent workshop, where this process repeats itself. We ask participants in our workshops to be respectful and use the Q&A field or comment form to provide feedback. Our goal is for these rules to be a reflection of our work together, and our work will only benefit from these workshops being inclusive and participatory. So we just ask everyone to be respectful and show manners. Now I give the floor to Luke.
Thank you, Annalyn. Looks like you gave me some extra time too, so I appreciate that. Let's go ahead and talk about the provisions of House Bill 1543 in a little more detail. Jeff, do you want to go to the next slide, please? So House Bill 1543 is the result of the Clean Buildings Workgroup's legislative report, which included recommended changes to meet compliance for meeting compliance with the standard. The bill contains 3 key components: the authority to create and adopt alternative compliance pathways with the Clean Buildings Performance Standard, providing greater flexibility. Also, the ability to grant timeline extensions to building owners working towards compliance, And lastly, the third major component of this House bill was to allow for the addition of exemption categories to the standard. Next slide, please. So this rulemaking that we're doing this summer, really the main intention here is to codify rules to allow for implementing the extensions and the new exemptions prior to the first compliance date. So that's our big focus here, as well as amending rule language to improve clarity. As I mentioned, there's three major components to House Bill 1543, but there's quite a bit of other small details within the House bill that allows us to improve clarity in the standards. So we'll be amending rules, existing rules, to do so. We will also, as part of this rulemaking, to talk about alternatives compliance metrics, and hopefully we can get to some good alternative metrics through this process. But again, we have a limited amount of time for rulemaking, and we might not get as robust of alternative metrics this cycle. We can open up rulemaking in the future to improve and increase that list. Next slide. Oh, you got that. So House Bill 1543 amended RCW 19.27A .170. This allows building owners with tenants to request energy data from utility providers without prior consent. So no rules will be written to address this in the standard. However, we wanted to point out that House bill does give the authority for the building owners to request energy data of tenants. You'll notice that the term commercial has been struck through as well in the original RCW in order to accommodate the changes we made when House Bill 1540, or when the Tier 2 rules were adopted, requiring multifamily housing to comply with the Tier 2 requirements of the standard. Next slide, please. Okay, so as mentioned, House Bill 1543 gives us the allowance to create alternative metrics. And one of those could be updating the standard to the most current version of standard 100. The most current version currently is the 2024 version of the standard. We don't have any plans to update this at this time, but subsequent iterations of the standard of Clean Buildings Performance Standard could be updated to whatever the most current ASHRAE standard is. That standard 100 is. Next slide. Okay, so as mentioned, House Bill 1543 gives Congress the authority to create alternative compliance pathways through rulemaking. We will have the opportunity during this round of rulemaking to explore alternative performance metrics that are in alignment with the intent of the original RCW in order to expand compliance options. Commerce also intends to explore introducing an emissions-based compliance pathway to the standard. However, this will take a bit more effort and will not be considered during this year's rulemaking. Next slide, please. Again, one of the big provisions of House Bill 1543 was to expand the list of exemption. I'm going to go over a little more detail in a couple of slides of that, but go ahead and skip to the next slide. So this bill gives Congress the opportunity to provide more clarity and flexibility in rule to how exemptions may be aggregated. So it's not just allowing us to increase the number of exemptions or create new exemptions, but some more clarity on how multiple exemptions may be aggregated. For example, multiple partial exemptions may be aggregated to meet the intent of the RCW to allow buildings that may not have a single specific exemption eligibility, but may have multiple exemptions that, when aggregated, meet the intent of the RCW for providing exemption. It also provides the opportunity to increase clarity in how to measure GFA for exempt spaces. Next slide. Okay, so as mentioned, rules may be developed that would allow for exemption to the performance metric, but still require, some of them may still require benchmarking and implementation of the EMP and O&M program. So during this rulemaking session, we'll kind of create the new exemptions, and I just want to point out that House Bill 1543 allows us the authority to allow, you may call it exemption light or partial exemption, where you may be exempt from the performance metric of the standard, but still need to benchmark, implement the EMP and the O&M program. So some of the areas where House Bill 1543 specifically talks about providing more exemptions would be in cases for K-12 schools, public hospital districts, historic buildings, significant losses in assessed values since the COVID-19 pandemic, and then we can create other exemptions based on other extenuating circumstances. Next slide, please. So extensions, this provision of 1543 gives Congress the authority to create rules that would allow Congress to grant extensions for building owners. So extensions would be for 2 years beyond the original compliance date and can be extended for another 2 years. Rules will need to be developed to identify conditions that may need to be met in order to grant extensions, such as existing effort in complying with the standard, but that will be discussed during the rulemaking process and the workshops, and we encourage your input. Next slide. Penalties. So new language in 1543 clarifies that penalties cannot, for noncompliance, cannot be passed along to tenants unless the tenant is not allowing access to the property in order to make the changes needed to comply with the standard. Next slide. Okay, so next couple slides are just kind of summarizing what we've gone over already. So the scope of the rulemaking is extensions, exemptions, alternative compliance pathways or metrics. Next slide, please. So, you know, each time we open up rulemaking, it gives us an opportunity to improve the language in the rules in order to create more clarity. So that's going to be a focus for us as well. We are not going to be updating existing energy use intensity targets at this point. We have been charged with doing that in 2029. So once we get our first batch of data from our first compliance cycle, we'll be able to better improve or adjust the energy use intensity targets that are listed in the standard today at that time. And then the intent there is to project out targets for future compliance cycles so the building owners can kind of plan for future reductions in energy use intensity targets. We're not creating rules for the incentive programs during this rulemaking cycle. And like I noted before, we're not updating the reference standard from ASHRAE Standard 100 2018 at this point. All right, time to hand it over to Dylan to talk about survey results. Thanks, Dylan.
Thank you, Luke. Hi, everyone. On June 2nd, Commerce opened a survey form sent out to everyone in attendance here, seeking suggestions for rulemaking, specifically surrounding those alternative compliance pathways, extensions, and exemptions. Today, we wanted to highlight some of those early takeaways from submitted responses. Next slide, please. All right, the summarized responses here include all responses received prior to 8 a.m. this morning. So we received 45 survey responses representing many different counties within Washington, as well as some respondents from California, Colorado, and Oregon. Responses represent a variety of different building scenarios, including Tier 1 buildings, Tier 2 covered buildings, district energy systems, as well as exempt buildings, and a couple of instances of citizens or folks that don't represent buildings. Next slide, please. Respondent background. Respondents also represent a diverse variety of roles and industries. As you can see in this word cloud on the left, there are building owners, facilities personnel, managers of all variety, conservation, project managers, and these folks all come from a variety of industries. As shown on the right, the survey results prominently featured included consultants, schools, government, and real estate entities. Next slide, please. Jumping into the first section of the bill, alternate compliance pathways. Respondents favor alternate compliance pathways, and shown on this left side of the screen, about 2/3 of survey respondents found energy use intensity reductions over time to be an appropriate alternate compliance pathway. And those other three, all three others received at least 50% favorability for things like categorical compliance, a percentage EUI reduction pathway, or a cost maximums for building investments. As you'll see on the right, we also received suggestions to allow compliance for buildings that are achieving a carbon metric, site level compliance, building certifications, and more. Next slide, please. Jumping into our extensions results. Commerce also asked participants for their opinions about compliance extensions to the deadlines, specifically for a couple different building scenarios. In the case of supply chains shown here, 75% of respondents agreed or strongly agree with granting extensions for buildings whose compliance is impacted by supply chain challenges. Next slide, please. Similarly, when asked the same question, but regarding workforce shortages, responses yielded similar support with general agreement for allowing compliance extensions in the case of workforce shortage. Next slide, please. Last one here, shown here, it seems that fewer respondents strongly favor extensions in the case of building ownership changes. However, just 1 in 9 respondents actually disagree with the allowance. Next slide, please. When we asked about circumstances that may justify compliance extensions, we did have to summarize some of the responses because respondents included often multiple and a variety of different circumstances. But some of these summarized responses commonly support additional extensions for buildings that are working towards compliance, experiencing financial hardship, or conditions beyond the building owner's control, We also see a number of different suggestions below, everything from substantial changes in occupancy, categorical extensions, extensions based on activity types or other circumstances. So many different suggestions were brought in for compliance extension circumstances. Next slide, please. This goes hand in hand with the previous slide, but in conjunction with that, we asked folks what documentation, if any, should be provided to justify these extensions. And respondents suggested that documents like financial reports, bid proposals, or written plans / attestations regarding compliance were some of the most easily justified extension documentation, but we also received suggestions to provide extensions based on an audit finding, a project contract, permits or scopes of work, or in one case, proof that the letter was never received. Next slide, please. Thirdly, we asked about fairness, transparency, and efficiency. Fairness and transparency are very important to commerce, and we'll take some of these following submitted suggestions into consideration when we begin draft rulemaking. But some of the summarized responses really touched on making sure that our rules around extension criteria and documentation are clear and consistent, that we're allowing flexibility in unique circumstances. And there were also some suggestions regarding the review and how that may be handled for extensions, but making sure that this is clear and standardized for building owners in order to maintain fairness. Next slide, please. When asked about possible benchmarks or milestones in order to receive extensions, respondents favor demonstration of progress, and some of that comes from demonstration of energy benchmarking, progress towards compliance, a implemented energy management plan and operations and maintenance program. Multiple responses also suggest showing an energy audit, which might demonstrate why an extension is necessary in order to implement all cost-effective energy efficiency measures. We also received a suggestion that no milestones should be required in order to receive an extension. Next slide, please. Moving over to exemptions. We asked folks what additional exemption suggestions they may have, and people provided a variety of different responses. We got suggestions for additional exemptions, including nonprofit and healthcare buildings, additional economic situations, as well as some survey responses that supported the existing exemption, financial hardship, or the expansion of that exemption category. I also want to acknowledge that some survey responses received may not have been directly included in this summary, but were reviewed with consideration by Commerce. And before we move on to this next slide, I did want to address, there were some suggestions received in this survey about things such as changing targets or making changes to building activity types. And as Luke addressed earlier in this presentation, that is not in the scope of our current rulemaking session, but those suggestions were reviewed with consideration. Next slide, please. And I think I'm passing it over to Annalyn.
Thank you, Dylan. So next steps. So where to find information? During this rulemaking session, visit our Clean Buildings homepage. If you would like, you can also subscribe to our bulletin where you'll find the latest news on the clean buildings, including the rulemaking sessions. On our Clean Buildings homepage, you'll find a specific section on rulemaking. We'll post the recording, the comment form, proposed rules, and any other links to the rulemaking material. If you're unable to find the links you're looking for, feel free to email us and we'd be happy to assist you. Here's our rulemaking workshop schedule. As I mentioned before, July 2nd would be our first workshop, July 23rd, and then later August 23. If needed, we can add additional workshops. However, as of right now, this is the schedule. Now let's open it up for questions. Jeff?
Right. Great. Thank you, Annalyn. And yes, we've got a number of questions coming through the Q&A. So thank you everyone for utilizing that. Please feel free to continue using that. And also thank you to the Clean Buildings team for addressing those questions as they come in. James, Judy, Donnie, Emily, thank you so much. We do have a live question that I'd like to bring forward. Jackson, you've been very patient with your hand up, so I'm going to go ahead and bring you forward here. All right, Jackson, you can go ahead. Jackson, if you're talking, unfortunately, we cannot hear you.
Hello, can you hear me now?
There we go. Thank you.
Oh, great. Sorry, I was just saying I didn't know I had my hand up. I don't actually have a question.
Oh, okay. Awesome. Well, if something does come up, feel free to pop it back up and we'll bring it forward.
Cool, thank you.
You bet. So, all right. Another hand up here is, let's see, Jamil. Let's see, Jamil, go ahead. And Jamil, if you are also trying to speak, you're on mute. The hand go down, so, okay. All right. Just real quick, Dylan, going back to the survey, we had a question come in asking how long the survey is going to be open.
Yes, we will not be closing the survey immediately. That said, I did want to address that in the coming future, we'll be releasing a public comment form for some responses, but if you are opening this survey link right now and responding to it, I welcome you to do so. Commerce will continue reviewing and considering those suggestions. One good example of that from a question that someone asked was, someone asked in the Q&A, how would we document extensions, or how would we document / justify an extension for supply chain delays or workforce shortages? And that is an area that Commerce is taking suggestions on. If we provide an extension in some form, how should we look and ask for documentation of that? I encourage people to keep responding.
Great, thank you, Dylan. So, if I just want to clarify with the question here. So it's going to remain open, but most likely be closed prior to the July 2nd workshop, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Another question to the team that's come in is asking if the reference standard is not updated as part of this rulemaking, are the considered alternative metrics all currently supported by ASHRAE 100 2018?
I can answer that, Jeff. So there are several sections in House Bill 1543 relating to the allowance for creating new alternative metrics. I believe section 4(1)(b) or 1B just talks about how Commerce can, or the rules can adopt any subsequent version of Standard 100. 2A of section 4 speaks specifically to adopting any alternative metric that is currently published by ASHRAE, so that could be from 2018 or 2024. And lastly, Section 4.2H talks more generally about this rulemaking process allowing us to adopt alternative metrics that aren't necessarily currently adopted by ASHRAE, so it could be something outside of Standard 100. Hopefully that answers your question.
Great. If there's a follow-up question to that, please feel free to either come on live or just drop it in the Q&A and we can loop back on that. Hey, Luke, while you're here, if you don't mind, the next question I see in the Q&A, I want to present it to you here and give you an opportunity and certainly invite the team to chime in. I'm going to read it directly. It is a bit lengthy here. So it says, during a recent meeting, the owner of Dairy Gold noted a significant increase in energy consumption on retrofitted assets utilizing refrigerants R413 and R415. In response, I inquired whether there would be provisions for penalty exemptions or waivers for organizations exceeding their energy consumption limits as outlined in House Bill 1257. Inquiry made on the premise that such exceedances are directly attributable to the elevated energy demands caused by refrigerant transitions mandated under the RAMP regulations issued by Department of Ecology. Oh, sir.
Yeah, I mean, I can start up. Yeah, I can start off just by saying that, we'd have to look specifically at your case and to understand a little bit more about how these new refrigerant requirements from the Department of Ecology do affect the energy consumption of commercial buildings when it comes to refrigeration. So that may be something that we need to investigate a little bit deeper, perhaps sending us an email to our buildings email would be a good way to start that conversation. I'm not sure if anybody else on the team has comment.
Great. All right. Excellent. Thanks, Luke. Appreciate you addressing that one. All right. Are there plans for alternative compliance pathways based on greenhouse gas reductions similar to the City of Seattle's BEPS compliance program? Or I'm sorry, BEPS compliance laws.
Yeah. So two parts to this answer. One is yes, we do plan to consider introduction of an emissions metric for the Clean Building Performance Standard as an alternative compliance path. We are not going to be doing it in this year's rulemaking session, though. That's going to take quite a bit more work to study before we do so. And the second part is when we do so, we really do hope to provide some kind of coordination with City of Seattle BEPS program so that we can perhaps honor the compliance with the BEPS program in subsequent cycles as part of the Clean Buildings Performance Standard compliance as well. So an effort will be made to kind of coordinate the two programs. But it's not likely to happen until following cycle. So for largest buildings, 2031, and then 2032 and 2033, depending on the size of the tier 1 building. Yeah, that's all I have to say on that.
All right. Let's see. Anna Lynn, if you don't mind, I'm going to direct this one to you. This question is asking if we can indicate the specific process to submit comments on draft rules.
We will have a comment form that building owners can utilize to submit their comments and any kind of edits. So usually when the workshop occurs, we will present our proposed rules. During that proposed rules, we'll share a draft of those rules. You can take that and you could mark it up and you could submit it through the form. If you're unable to access the form, we will also accept it through our inbox.
Great. And the building's email is in the chat. Certainly we can post it again if we need to. So
Yeah,
Great.
so currently there's no draft rules to comment on, but if you have other feedback or suggestions or ideas, please use the survey to share your ideas so that we could just keep things in order. Thank you.
Thank you, Annalyn. All right. Let's see. I know, Dylan, you are answering this, but I just wanted to bring it to light as kind of a extension off of the last question in regards to the building owner. John's asking if we can provide a broad definition for building owner, and will the definition for building owner include language regarding building owner rep?
Yes, I'll take this a little bit. I believe this person is referring to the fact that our definition of building owner is an individual or entity possessing title to a building. In the event of a land lease, the building owner is the entity possessing title to the building on leased land. So I think this person is referring to submitting compliance documentation as the building owner. And I think there is some effort that Commerce can make in making the guidance on building owner or building owner representative more clear. That would probably be reflected at some point in a guidance document. We may make edits to the roles and responsibilities guidance.
Excellent. Thanks, Dylan. And John, certainly if there's a follow-up to that, let us know. All right. We got a question asking if we can speak more to the language in the bill that does not allow for landlords to pass through penalties to tenants. That is challenging for triple net leased properties where landlords don't have control over utilities or energy use. And I don't know if Annalyn or Luke, if you're able to respond to that one.
Yeah, we recognize the complications there. We don't have any new. We've kind of reviewed the provisions within House Bill 1543 that are new relative to tenant building owner relationships and their leases and responsibility for the standard. I don't have a whole lot more to add to that at this point, but certainly can be something we can discuss further.
Yeah, I certainly, I think it would be helpful because, you know, members of our team, we don't have, you know, the expertise and have 100% of the perspective that you're showing, that you're kind of letting us know about the challenges with triple net leases. We understand there's challenges. So if you'd like, during our rulemaking, if you could share those challenges so that we could take into consideration and maybe some suggestions on how we can overcome those challenges would be helpful.
And, you know, it's the survey might provide a good opportunity to provide more detail to us prior to the rulemaking starting. The comment form related specifically to proposed rule amendments can be used as well, but if you have some energy to put into this effort prior to the rulemaking workshops beginning, that would be useful.
Excellent, team. Thank you. All right. This next question, I'm going to assume this is asking after the rulemaking and has taken place and new rules or the updated rules are in place. But the question is asking, what does the path look like for future grants and incentives to meet EMP and O&M program compliance?
Yeah, if I understand the question correctly, will there be grants and incentives specific for EMP and O&M development and implementation? I'm not the best person to answer that since I don't work directly with the incentive and grants program, but we hear that message. For tier 2 buildings, there is a 30 cent per square foot incentive. It's limited to 150 million for the total program. It's 30 cents per square foot for tier 2 buildings to meet the standard. So that would be benchmarking development and implementation of the energy management plan and operations and maintenance program. So as far as tier 1 buildings, providing grants and incentives for that work, there is we had one round of Clean Buildings Performance grants this past year, and it allowed for that funding to go towards development and implementation of those requirements of the standard. That Clean Buildings Performance Grant Program has been refunded from what we understand and from what I understand. And so potentially there'll be an ability for folks to apply for grant funding through that program to go towards the EMP and O&M. I'm not sure if anybody from our incentive team wants to provide more detail if they're on the call.
That might be a good question to follow up with Luke as well, with the incentives team. So I will note that question and follow up. And I believe my understanding as well is that the current rule changes don't necessarily affect incentive applications or anything like that. Because it's compliance. Okay. All right. Let's see. Next question. And again, folks, as a reminder, if you want to bring your question live, feel free to raise that virtual hand. We do have another 10 minutes or so we definitely have time. Next question, the Q&A is asking if we're considering extensions for publicly funded universities whose applications for funding related to compliance with the CBPS and House Bill 1390 may be denied by the state.
Yeah, with extensions, we're looking for ideas where people find that extensions are going to be necessary. So we can develop that through the rulemaking process. And again, if you have ideas, the survey would be a good place to put that. 1390, House Bill 1390 was the District Energy System Decarbonization Bill that was passed in previous years. The rules for that would require decarbonization of district energy system heating plants for state-owned campuses, which are defined as campuses served by a district energy system of 5 or more buildings with a total aggregate GFA of 100,000 or more. So within that rule, a plan is to be submitted by June 30th of this year for those either opting into that or that are required to decarbonize. And within that plan, you can state your scheduled timeline for completion of those requirements. It could be 15 years or more. So generally, that would be where we take care of those extensions for those subject to the decarbonization requirements. If Commerce was deny a decarbonization plan, then we may provide extensions through the standard decarbonization, or not decarbonization, through these rules that we'll be developing this summer.
Okay, few more here. Let's see. Brian's got a question referring to an earlier question on see the landlords. It's asking. Sorry, it's jumping around here on me. What about mandated improvements to buildings' energy infrastructure? The cost of mandatory improvement should be passed to tenants, and those factors into their rental fees. This is earlier in reference to the early answer that said that penalties for non-compliance may not be passed to tenants.
Yeah, the law is silent on how building owners recoup their investment in the building. It's only where the tenant cannot, as expressed, the tenant or the building owner cannot pass on penalties due to non-compliance to their tenants.
All right. Regarding the amendments to the requirement for utilities to release aggregated tenant data and the removal of the 3 or more tenant statement, are utilities now required to provide data to building owners without tenant consent, even in cases where there is only one tenant? Or does that case not apply because the data for a single tenant would not be admitted?
Yeah, as the RCW is written, utility can provide tenant utility data to the building owner, even if it's just a single tenant.
All right. So, let's see, a couple more in here. Let's see. Paul, I'm not sure if looking at your comments here in the Q&A, I'm not sure if there's a question. Mentioned that you and John have the same question, but looking from the utility perspective and providing tenant cost usage data to the owner. Okay, just reference to the last one. House bill states owners makes it difficult for the utility. And then let's see. All right, Judy, I know you're in the response or in process of answering this one, but I'll bring it forward if you don't mind. Seems that the exemptions, extensions, and rule changes are mostly related to Tier 1 buildings. How does Washington expect to navigate and clarify these changes for Tier 1 compared to Tier 2? Some of the questions are related to the owner compared to the tenant who pays utilities. This complication also seen in multifamily buildings, which fall within Tier 2. And Judy, I know you're in the process of answering that. I don't know if you would be able to come in live to answer that as well.
Basically, what I was typing was wherever possible, we're going to make the rules consistent between Tier 1 and Tier 2. So for extensions and exemptions, where they're applicable, they would apply to both Tier 1 and Tier 2. Luke, do you have anything to add?
Okay. Thank you. All right. So just a few more minutes here. And I got a couple more that are popping in. So previous RCW requires utilities to provide aggregate building data to owners with 3 or more tenants. I didn't see in the term aggregate in the slide implying owners could receive usage data for individual units. This would violate one of our policies protecting personally identified information for customers. I don't see a reason why the portfolio manager program would require data for individual units. Will the term aggregate be added to the new language?
That's a good point. We'll have to take a closer look at the RCW language there, but I hear what you're saying, and we definitely would want to provide that term aggregate so that the utility does not have to release individual tenant data when there's multiple tenants in the building.
And then Luke, a follow-up from Brian's question earlier. And just want to clarify that understands the answer correctly, that the law does not address compliance costs to be an answer that landlords certainly can factor in the cost of a building to rent or lease rates, correct?
Correct. Yeah, the RCW does not dictate whether building owners can pass compliance costs, not penalty costs, but compliance costs onto the tenants.
Great. All right, Jesse, I see your hand up here, and I want to get to Karen's question as in the Q&A. I don't recall if we brought this up earlier, and then I'll go to Jesse here. But Karen's asking if the reference standard is not excuse me, updated as part of this rulemaking, are the considered alternative metrics all currently supported by ASHRAE 100 2018?
Yeah, we haven't, we'll see as we develop these through rulemaking, whether they're all supported by standard 100. It's likely that they won't with the 2024 version. It's likely that there'll be other alternative metrics that are not in ASHRAE standard 100 2024.
Thank you, Luke. All right, well, we're going to wrap up the Q&A with one more from Jesse. That's got their hand up, so I'm going to bring Jesse in live here. Go ahead.
All right, thank you. So I asked a question above, and I just wanted to clarify. So in our case, we're not necessarily seeking an exemption so much as a reclassification, because we're an odd use type. I'm representing the Seattle Aquarium. And where we got classified, understandably, was in an occupancy that is more like a community center, but we are pumping a tremendous amount of water through our facility. So we really view ourselves more like a hospital. We're providing animal care. And will there be a way to justify a reclassification because the medical classification or the laboratory classification has targets that are reasonable for us, but the current classification would require something unachievable, and we don't want to have to do the alternative pathway year over year because we'll never hit the targets.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Jesse. We have kind of approached this in previous rulemaking by allowing aquariums, as one example, to use a shift normalization factor related to 24/7 operation. But we can look into, alternative approaches for aquariums. Again, if you could either email us with specifics of your situation, I'll keep that on the list for us to make sure we don't miss during the rulemaking process. I imagine you'll be involved with the rulemaking process, but I don't imagine you'll be available for all of it. So we want to make sure we keep tabs on that.
Okay. Great, thank you.
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you very much, everyone. We're going to wrap up the Q&A with that. Any additional questions that come up, you see the building's email address there on your screen there. I'm also adding our Clean Buildings customer support form. This is another option to connect with the buildings team, where those questions come directly to us. And then if it's something specific to technical assistance or data or incentives, we certainly get it to those folks as well. So, Luke, Annalyn, I'll go ahead and turn it back over to you to close this out then.
Thank you, everyone. We look forward to your participation to future rulemaking. That's it. Have a great day. Thanks for joining us.